choosing a visit to one of the many manufacturing companies that will host an open house on that date.
On behalf of the mayor, the board, and staff.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm sure if Pat was here, there are 30 to 40 regional manufacturers that are going to participate on this day. It's a full-day event. There's going to be 3 or 4, maybe 5 in the McChesney Park area. I know I'm slotting the mayor in on a spot, myself in on a spot. If any of the trustees would like to participate on that day, please let me know. It will be in the morning. It's basically to show the partnership that we're trying to create with the manufacturing and industrial industries and the village of McChesney Park. Thank you.
And Greg, I'm sure you've seen this. Last year I had a chance to be at Forest City Gear. I know that's in Roscoe, but for the kids that were at that particular location to know that there are parts being made there that are on that rover on Mars, their eyes just lit up, and I can't imagine how many of them might think about a career at a Forest City Gear type place, not realizing that we're putting parts on major projects right here locally. It was just a great program to be part of last year.
I'm excited about it to learn more about what manufacturers we have out there. I've just learned about this much, but there's this much that's out there. It's huge. Thank you.
I also wanted to say I'm excited because all of those students that are out going and looking at these manufacturing companies will be coming to Rock Valley College, where we will be serving them lunch, and I'm very much participating in that, and I'll be hosting all of the students and hearing all of their wonderful stories of the morning. So this is a great opportunity for us.
Okay. Next, we have Human Resources and Accounting Manager, Michelle Johansson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight we have a presentation of our fiscal year 2013 audit by Sikich LLP. We have step partner Stephanie Lombardi and senior manager Carla here to present the audit, and if you have any questions, answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. I think we were provided with the reports before the meeting. I'm going to review the annual financial report and what we call the board communication. I'm going to try to just give a high-level overview of changes that you would see from the prior year report and then answer any questions you may have. If you turn to page 1 of the annual financial report, this is the independent auditor's report and is the only part of the annual financial report that belongs to the auditor. We issued an unmodified or clean opinion, which means that we found no material misstatements in the financial statements that were presented to us to audit. If you compare this report to the prior year reports, you would notice a little bit of a change. We were required to implement what was called the clarity standards this year. And what the goal of those standards were to make it clearer to the individual reading our report to identify exactly what our responsibilities are, what management's responsibilities are, what the opinion was, and if there were any emphasis on matters that needed to be included in the report. This year we had one emphasis of a matter because we implemented some new standards that I'll discuss later. If you turn to page MD&A 1 through 12, I just want to point this out because this is management's discussion and analysis and provides a good overview of the financial activities that occurred during the fiscal year. You can gain a lot of insight into what happened over the past fiscal year by reading this, which is written by management. It'll also provide you with any long-term capital or debt issuance plans that management has. If you turn to page 4 of the document, and then also refer to page 6 and 7 at your leisure, the new standards that I referred to earlier were Governmental Accounting Standard Board Statements number 63 and 65. And what they did was added new categories to the statement of net position and the balance sheets of the fund financial statements. The one new category is called a deferred outflow. And what that is consumption of net position that applies to a future period, so it won't be recognized until that time. Until it is recognized, it's carried as a separate category on the financial statements. The village had no deferred outflows. What those normally are refunding losses when you refund debt, and you'll incur a loss that has to be written over the life of the bonds. You did have a deferred inflow of resources, which represents an acquisition in that position that applies to a future period and won't be recognized until that time. The deferred inflow that the village recognizes on the statement in that position is the unavailable property tax and assessment revenue. And what that is taxes that you've assessed or levied that you will not receive or recognize until a future period because you're going to use them in a different budget year, which will be your next fiscal year. And then the other change on page 4 is that what was previously referred to as net assets is now referred to as net position. And it's just a change in terminology due to these deferred items. And then if you go to page 5, there's 3 lines from the bottom. There's an item called prior period adjustments, and what that is a restatement of your prior year financial statements. There were 2 restatements. The first was that there were bond issue costs that were capitalized on the statement of net assets last year that we needed to write off due to the implementation of GASB 65. That amount totaled $300,069. And it was a decrease in your net position. The other decrease in your net position was a little over almost $120 million. And what that restatement was the right-of-way that you capitalized in previous years was capitalized at improved land costs rather than as unimproved land cost values. And we were comparing that to other local municipalities and noticed that the number for the village was rather large. So we worked with Michelle and determined the value for what the undeveloped cost would be and wrote the land down to that value. Does anybody have any questions on the annual financial report itself? I'm going to move to the auditor's communication then to the Board of Trustees. There's 2 documents that are contained in this communication. The first starts on page 2, and this is the required communications to the board. We're required to make as part of our audit. It starts with significant audit findings, and as discussed before, we implemented 2 new standards in the current year. Generally, there are accounting estimates contained in the financial statements because at the end of the year, accruals that are necessary may not always be quantified by history after the fiscal year. We didn't feel that there were any accounting estimates included in the financial statements that could change within the next year, but we're required to communicate that if there were. We didn't feel there were any disclosures that were particularly sensitive that could change within the next year. We encountered no difficulties in performing the audit. That's just a required communication. We list on page 5 the adjustments that were made during the audit. However, we do not feel that these weren't adjustments that we weren't provided information for. Basically, what they are is taking the fund financial statements that the village maintains on an ongoing basis throughout the year, and then we convert them to what we call the government-wide statements, which present all the long-term assets and liabilities of the village. And those are contained in that annual financial report on pages 4 and 5 that I discussed. We had no disagreements with management. We requested management representations of what was portrayed to us during the audit and just wanted management to confirm that in writing, which they did. We're always interested if management makes consultations with other independent accountants, because if they are, we want to be aware of what opinions they were given. We were told there were no communications made with other independent accountants. And then prior to being retained as auditors, we always discussed a variety of issues with management. None of those had a bearing on whether or not we were going to be retained as auditors. And then there was a change last year in how the supplementary information had to be reviewed by us. Previously, we performed these, we would make sure that the supplemental information agreed with the other portions of financial statements. Before last year, that wasn't a requirement, but we're just stating here that we did do that review. Any questions on that particular letter? Okay, and then I'll move to page 7, which is what we refer to as a management letter. This is where we would make any recommendations based on our audit. One of the things we're required to do as part of our audit is to review key internal controls in order to assess our audit risk and design our audit procedures. We do not audit internal controls, and there are control processes that we will not review because they're not key to the village. Based on that review, we noted no material weaknesses. However, on page 8, we did have one recommendation this year, which was also communicated last year. There's kind of a glitch in the accounting software that's used where if there's a voided check, instead of the voided check being reissued and issued a different check number than originally, the software will just issue the same check number and kind of duplicate the transaction within the general ledger. So it's hard to tell that the transaction is being posted properly. We've reviewed those items and know that they are. However, we feel that the software should be modified so that a new check number is issued for the reissued check. I know that Michelle's been working with the software company in order to rectify that situation.
And I will just note, as of now, it has been fixed.
And then on pages 11 through 13, we just note the items that we communicated in the prior year, and all of those items have been implemented in the current year. We want to thank Michelle and her staff and all of the village staff for their cooperation during our audit. All of our requests were responded to very timely, and we appreciate all their assistance.
Thank you.
Any questions for anyone? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, we have village engineer Chris Dopkins.
Thank you, Your Honor. A brief report on ongoing projects. The resurfacing work really started in earnest last week with the work on Copper Drive. Contractor was out to begin the median replacement. This week they're working on milling and obviously the improvements here at Village Hall in the front parking lot. They'll begin manhole adjustments tomorrow, and hopefully we have our first concrete pour out in front of Village Hall tomorrow. And hopefully the second concrete pour at the end of the week and try to get the parking lot put back as quickly as possible. We also met with the City of Bluffs Park. We're coordinating projects with Anna Avenue. We want to make sure that the surface course is put down at the same time, and we have the same contractor for both communities, and we'll be coordinating that so that we have one seamless pavement put down for the section by Elm Avenue into the City of Bluffs Park. Wesley, Nicor has finished up their work. The contractor's back laying storm sewer. We should have storm sewer completion by the end of this week. We had our first pour on Harlem Road to put back the patches at Mildred and put the cover back on the new junction chamber that was installed. The second pour is scheduled for tomorrow. We got some good news today that our concrete for the first pour actually came in strength, so we'll be relocating some of the traffic control tomorrow and getting Harlem a little bit more open than it has been in a couple of weeks. They'll be finishing up the storm sewer this coming week and starting pour out next week, hopefully curb and gutter late the week thereafter. On Anna Avenue, ComEd relocated the pole. The curb and gutter was placed in that radius return where the pole was. The contractor right now is preparing for pavement. Hopefully it's scheduled for Wednesday. We've got some weather coming at us this week though. Hopefully the rain stays away long enough for us to get that road paved. The contractor's in doing final shaping, final manhole adjustments, and again, we expect to have the road paved this week. The Illinois 251 service drive, the contractor's made good progress there. All the underground work is complete. They've completed core out. Curb and gutter is scheduled for this Wednesday, again, weather permitting. The flood demos, we do not have any demos going on this week, but the contractor will be in next week. We have a update or a demo deadline coming up of, I think, the 26th that we have to have one house demolished for. Safe routes to schools, the contractor is hoping to be kind of wrapped up by the end of next week. They have one final pour today. They'll be finishing restoration in the next couple of days, and that should be it until the new poles, the traffic signals, warning signals are in. Those are a long lead time, but the contractor's got the concrete poured. All they have to do is